So, welcome to this fifth session of the Diwan of Sorbonne University Abu Dhabi and CIFREPA. CIFREPA will sound as a new name for most of the audience, but since January 1st, 2021, the research center formerly known as CIFAS has been renamed CIFREPA, an acronym for Centre de Recherche Français sur la Péninsule Arabique, the French research center on the Arabian Peninsula. Our guest tonight is Delphine Pagès-El Karoui. Dr. Pagès-El Karoui is Associate Professor of Geography of the Arab World at Institut National des Langues et Civilisations Orientales, INALCO, in Paris. She specializes in urban geography and migration studies. Her previous work has focused on Egypt and Egyptians abroad, transnational networks, and migration narratives in film and literature. In 2002, she defended her PhD entitled Nile Delta Cities, Urban Identities and Emerging Urban Region, Tanta, El Mahalla, El Mansoura. She recently defended her Habilitation à Diriger les Recherches, Habilitation to supervise doctoral research, with a new fieldwork on Dubai, ville, mondiale, le cosmopolitisme à l'épreuve, Dubai as a global city, questioning Cosmopolitanism. The question of the Gulf region's exceptional or non-exceptional status, particularly concerning its dealing of migration and socio-ethnic hierarchies, has been a much discussed topic lately, and I'm therefore particularly happy to welcome this talk on Cosmopolitan Dubai, consumption and segregation in a global city that aims at rethinking cosmopolitanism outside of its normative framework, taking Dubai as a case study. Dr. Pagès-El Karoui will be speaking for about 45 minutes, following which we will start the questions and debate section of this Diwan. You can send questions in advance via the conversation window on Zoom webinars, and we will give you the opportunity to speak directly with our guest. So, Delphine, you can now speak.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. I'm very pleased to be here with you and invited to participate to your Diwan. And I'm very honored to present my result of my recent work on cosmopolitanism in Dubai. And I will illustrate my speech with two different examples, because as a geographer, I will be talking a lot about spaces, landscapes, and what I'm trying to do with my work is, as you said perfectly, to rethink cosmopolitanism from the case study of Dubai, but moving it out its normative dimensions. So let me just start with one figure. Dubai is very famous for different records. The highest building with Burj Khalifa, the biggest mall. But there is one record which is not so much known, which is the number of foreigners, which is about 100%. And if you, in this perspective, Dubai is the most cosmopolitan city in the world if you stick to this very first simple definition of cosmopolitanism from a very demographic point. So when you paradoxically, although there is some research about cosmopolitanism in the Gulf, there is not so many works about what kind of cosmopolitanism Dubai embodies. There is, of course, some small work from Asef Bayat or from Massad who have been questioning this cosmopolitanism. But I think the first idea you have to remind is that it's thinking Dubai as cosmopolitan is necessarily paradoxical. Why is it paradoxical? Because it's non-integrative, and usually when you have in mind this concept of cosmopolitanism, it's very strongly linked with this idea of integration. And of course, you know that in the Gulf context is completely at the opposite, is more about non-integration. So in this context, even though if you have policies which are promoting tolerance and happiness, which could be interpreted as illiberal cosmopolitanism, I would say there is no cosmopolitan project in the Kantian perspective. So all my endeavor is about rethinking this cosmopolitanism, but starting from very empirical studies of spaces and landscape. So I will just try to move to the other one. So when you read about cosmopolitanism and when you read about cosmopolitanism in Dubai, you will see a lot of researchers who are questioning this cosmopolitanism and who will say, okay, there is a kind of cosmopolitanism in Dubai, but it's very superficial. And in a way, this echoes with a general thinking of cosmopolitanism from the sociologist Delphine, who is speaking of a pseudo-cosmopolitanism, which focuses only on the use of a lifestyle of other cultures to enrich one material life without normative engagement. So for Delphine, this kind of cosmopolitanism which do not engage with this normative engagement, it's automatically pseudo or superficial cosmopolitanism.
Excuse me, Delphine, you are not sharing your PowerPoint at this moment.
Okay, what happened? I don't know, because for me, I can see it.
No, you are not sharing the screen at the moment. Can you share your screen?
Okay, so let me check something. Sorry for this.
Yes, you started the shift. You started it. So now you have.
Okay, so sorry for the.
So
okay, sorry, you missed the first slide. I am now here in the second slide.
can you put it on slide mode as well?
Is it okay?
That's it.
Okay.
It's working.
So what I was trying to explain to you is the different vision of Dubai cosmopolitanism, and I wanted to quote one geographer, one French geographer, which name is Diriger, who has written about the places of globalization in the world and who has a special chapter on Dubai. And speaking about Dubai cosmopolitanism, he used in French the term of cosmopolitisme de décor. So in English, it would be maybe surface cosmopolitanism. And is always playing on an opposition between fake cosmopolitanism, which is the actual cosmopolitanism of Dubai, and one past, more authentic and exclusive cosmopolitanism, which correspond, according to him, to the pre-oil period. So saying that, I think he reproduces a very classical debate about cosmopolitanism between superficial and authentic cosmopolitanism. And you will find a lot of literature in the literature on cosmopolitanism about this distinction. And for me, it's also this kind of description, it's also part of the very numerous accounts of narratives about describing Dubai, contemporary Dubai, as ostentatious and as soulless. And I'm not exactly on this, it's not exactly my point when I'm trying to study Dubai. So what is my main research question? My main research question is just try thinking both what we can learn from cosmopolitanism, from Dubai about cosmopolitanism, and the cosmopolitanism is a very operative or heuristic tool to analyze Dubai. I am both in this dialectics of theoretical and empirical debate about Dubai and cosmopolitanism. So for me, studying the Gulf, the concept of cosmopolitanism can be heuristic, but on the condition that you use it with a very a strong empirically grounding approach. And for me, it's a tool who can be very useful if you want to think diversity in multicultural cities outside integration policies. So instead of discarding cosmopolitan as fake, as superficial, I'm wondering how we could describe its specificity in the Gulf. And for me, the real question is not whether Dubai is or is not a cosmopolitan city, but rather what kind of cosmopolitanism does Dubai embody? I'm not sure you want to dip into this very complicated. Maybe we can go back to this figure for the question, but I just want maybe just very quickly to precise, because cosmopolitanism is a very large concept. It has many different exceptions, many different meanings. So I rather, as a geographer, I'm rather interested in cosmopolitan places. So this third column, and which is in a way different from cosmopolitanism as a political or physical project, or speaking about cosmopolitan individual. When I'm speaking about cosmopolitan cities, that doesn't mean that every inhabitant of the city have to be cosmopolitans. It's not at all my point. When I'm speaking about cosmopolitan cities, I see emerging two kind of different ways of defining cosmopolitan cities. The first way is to describe a place which is open to the world, where inhabitants' practices and landscapes are strongly influenced by lifestyles, ideas, and products coming from outside, from elsewhere. And there you can find works of geographer, like the geographer Alan Latham, who has worked on Auckland about his cosmopolitan landscape of bars, Italian restaurant, French bistro, against the more traditional local pubs. And he is describing Auckland as a cosmopolitan city. But it has nothing to do in this definition with migration. It's more about globalization of the lifestyles. This is the first kind of definition. The second definition you can find, it's for cosmopolitan city, it's a place where people of diverse origins or backgrounds lived and coexist together, whatever the degrees of integration between them. And then I will go back to this figure, because if you're reading the literature on cosmopolitan city, you will see that there is always this question about to what extent a city is truly cosmopolitan, which means to what extent people are really mingling together. So some scholars prefer to distinguish between the truly cosmopolitan city, where there is a real kind of mixing. This is the first subcategory. And the second subcategory is, okay, there is a strong diversity, urban diversity, but people just don't really interact or mingle between them. So in this case, we will speak of pluralist societies. In my point of view, I rather have a larger comprehension of cosmopolitan urbanities. So I choose to embrace in the same definition all cosmopolitan with this kind of diversity, whatever the kind of mixing, to what extent people really mix or not together. And what is very interesting in Dubai case, it's Dubai is a perfect illustration of these two different dimensions of cosmopolitanism. Because in Dubai, the two dimensions, the cultural globalization and the hyper-diversity, are totally intertwined together. So what I propose to do now, and I'll try to go maybe more quickly now, is a talk in three parts. In the first part, I'd like just very quickly to remind you the four pillars of Dubai cosmopolitanism, which are globalization, consumption, non-integration policies, and segregation. And in the second and third part, I want to go more deeper on two case studies and to see how the states shape some cosmopolitan places, some cosmopolitan spaces, in order to achieve the status of a global city. And these two spaces, they illustrate very well how Dubai is projecting itself as a cosmopolis, which means for me a city where you can encounter and also buy, because you'll see that the commercial dimension is very strong, the world at a local scale. So there is really this idea that in Dubai, you will find the diversity of the whole world in only one place. So through my two case studies, I intend to go and to see behind the urban spectacle, and I'm very influenced by the work of Yasser El-Karoui, which is for me a really inspiring work. And I'm trying to study two ordinary and peripheric cosmopolitan spaces. So I'm looking for this cosmopolitan from very peripheric spaces. And I will talk about global village, trying to analyze the nexus between globalization and consumption in this kind of cosmopolitanism. And the second example will be from Dubai International City, where I will just have a look at the nexus between globalization, cosmopolitanism, and segregation. And the common point with the two is that in these two places, you can see emerging cosmopolitanism from below. And my talk is based on a paper, which is going to be published very soon. And it's part of a book I have co-edited with Catherine Lejeune, Camille Schmoll, and Eliane Thiollet, and which is called Migration, Urbanity, and Cosmopolitanism in a Globalized World. But what I want to mention is still my field work for Global Village and Dubai International City is still work in progress. So I need to make more field work to go in deeper details. So let's start for the first part. In the first part, but as I'm sure that you are all very familiar with the Gulf context, I will try to go very fast. So the first pillar for cosmopolitanism in Dubai is, of course, globalization. And this idea, very strong since 2000, that Dubai wants to put a name on the global cities map. And now in 2018, we see in different index that Dubai is quoted as a global city. So now its rankings may be different according to the different way of defining global city, but each time you will find Dubai present in this list of global city. And then I must also remind the link between forging these images of a global city with the need of the economic diversification of the post-oil economy. So the global image is a way to enhance this economic project of enhancing trade, finance, real estate, and tourism. So branding Dubai as a global city went through different world-class projects, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it, so I won't speak about that. Second pillar, consumption, and then maybe I'll go also a bit quickly on that, because also I'm sure you're very aware of all the historic growth of the city as a colonial port, and its very economic growth as a hub for first the region and then a world hub with this port and airport. But there is always this idea that tourism and commerce are very strongly linked, and that the malls, the big malls, are the cosmopolitan places per excellence, as it was showed by Laura Safre, and which provide world-class consumption infrastructure to facilitate this global lifestyle that people want to move in Dubai, want to invest in Dubai, will be looking for as a proof of its status of a global city. Third pillar, the non-integration part. I will be also very quick on that because I'm sure you're very much aware of the kafala system, which is producing very strong transients about the foreign population. And we have all this work about impossible citizen from Niano Vora, the temporary cities, again, from Yasser al-Sheshtawi. But this is very constitutive to a cosmopolitanism, which is where temporary places, temporary people are the main aspect of the social life. And the fourth aspect is segregation. Okay, so there is a small problem in my PowerPoint. Never mind, because there is twice the same picture. I just remind you also the way the Dubai was built, and especially for the part of the new Dubai, we have a car-driven, very fragmented urbanism, which is, of course, not exactly the same as segregation, but which help to this logics of segregation. You have also, because segregation is very used by scholars to define Gulf cities as a main characteristic. And in Dubai, you will find two very opposite forms of segregation. The labor camps, where lives in 2017 800,000 people. So there is a great part of the inhabitants of the city who live in labor camps. And on the other part, the gated communities. And there, I don't have any figures about how many people live, but of course it's quite less than that. So saying that, you have also in another paper, I've also tried to build with Yasser and Françoise Baroken, we have built indices of segregation, and we have found that indices of segregation in Dubai are very, very strong. So it's maybe also one of the most segregated cities in the world. But at the same time, I just want to remind that there is also spaces of strong mixing in public space. And sometimes also there is also kind of residential mixing in some high-rise buildings where you can find a very large mix of nationalities. So I think I'm not going to extend on that, but I think segregation in Dubai is something very special and which need to be explained in very large detail. But what I want to do now is maybe to choose two different spaces to see how it is worked at this very level of one specific place. And I will start my first example with Global Village, where I study this link between consuming, consumption, globalization, and cosmopolitanism. So I don't know how many of you have ever been to Global Village, but I just want to remind you that it's a very hybrid space. It's between an outdoor mall, first function, and it's also a leisure park. And third part, it's also a kind of universal exhibition because you have this different pavilion from either countries or region of the world, which are supposed to sell products or food from their own country. So how Global Village is presented on its website? It's presented as a world-leading multicultural festival park, providing world-class cultural and family entertainment, along with a cosmopolitan and diverse shopping experience. So it is presented as a cosmopolitan place from its website. And it's also a place which attracts a lot of people. There were 7 million of visitors in 2019. And I think, but there need to be a more survey to be done, but I think it's attracting both residents and tourism. So for me, Global Village is interesting because it's a perfect expression of a cheap version of cosmopolitanism, which is illustrating one place which stage a very strong taste for consuming foreign places. And it's a way of expressing Dubai as a cosmopolis. It's the place where you can encounter the diversity of the world. So here, some example. where you see the American pavilion, the Pakistan and the Russian pavilion. And each of these pavilions, they are renewed every year. So it's changing every year. You have here the Iron pavilion, and here the Egyptian one, with of course the Abu Simbel temple. So each country is represented by very stereotypical kind of iconic monument. If you look at what kind of geography or geopolitics the Global Village express, it's very interesting. From this map, I try to count how many countries were represented. There are about 27 pavilions. And from these 27 pavilions, there were 15 who were illustrating, were expressing, or were presenting countries of the Middle East, and 5 from Asia. So the world, as it is presented in Global Village, it's not a world centered on the West. It's more a world which is centered on Asia and the Middle East. So it's not exactly a world perceived on a Western perspective. And it's also interesting to look at the history of Global Village. When did it start, the experience of Global Village? It started in 1996 during the first Dubai Shopping Festival. And at this time, it was located very just in front of the Dubai municipality with some stalls. And the initiative came from the Emir itself, the Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum, and also Global Village belongs to the Dubai holding. So of course, it's a direct expression of the Emir public corporation. And then it moved in 2000 near the Wafi Mall. And 5 years later, it moved to its current location, which is very peripheral in Dubai, and where you have these huge parking lots able to attract a lot of people. So initially, the initiative is, of course, very strongly linked to Sheikh Mohammed. But at the same time, it's also linked to the Indian community. And there is one figure, one Indian businessman, Sunil Bhatia, who arrived from Bombay in 1976, and who became a self-made man, who claimed all the ladder of the social ladder. And when he started participating to Global Village in the first edition, while he was involved in the in the Dubai Indian Association. And from the beginning, the Indian pavilion played a very central role in the Global Village. And then he had his own corporation, his own firm, and he extended progressively his business. And now he's running also the China and the Europe pavilions. So he's one of the one who is managing the different pavilions. So I think this is interesting because you see here the different kind of actors which play a role in Dubai growth and in Dubai main landscape, and the strong presence of Indians inhabitants. What is also interesting to have in mind studying Global Village is it's relatively a cheap place. Dubai, of course, you know, is rather very expensive. And there, the entrance ticket is only 15 dirham, which is not that much. So it's one of the rare, cheap leisure place to go. So that's why we can speak about this place using the term of vernacular cosmopolitanism, if we just take the word from Nina Webner. So we are not at all in the elitist perspective of cosmopolitanism. So it's a cheap place. It's a place also open to, I don't know, there's the something wrong with my PowerPoint, because of course I didn't put this. Do you see also the same two images, Frédéric? I can't hear you anymore.
Well,
Okay.
sorry, my mic was off. Yes, we still can see the images, certainly, yes.
But it is the two same, because there is a problem. For me, I didn't put the same images. So, okay, never mind. There was another image, but I don't know, something very strange happened. The other image disappeared, was replaced by the same image. Because on the other one, I wanted to see, there were a picture showing you that the really diverse composition of the public, of the audience of Global City, which is
what is appearing now is Global, the park's mascot. This is what is appearing for us now.
Yeah, and you have the two same picture of Global on the stage, but there were another picture. I don't know what's I don't know what happened with the PowerPoint. One of the kind of mystery of never mind. So this global mascot is also interesting because it's very representative of this idea of global village as an illustration of the diversity of the world. But what I wanted to say, to show you with the other picture, which is not appearing, it's that you have a very diverse population attending to a global village. And what is very often said is that you can find also many nationals who are very visible in Dubai, in Global Village, and they are not. It's not the case in every other public space in Dubai. So paradoxically, it's a place where nationals are highly visible, and several papers insist on that, saying, if I just quote very quickly this from a national thing, there are people there of all nationalities from all walks of life, representing the full gamut of Dubai multicultural makeup. All the city perceived hierarchies seems to melt away. Literally and metaphorically, it is a common ground that is so often lacking in the UAE. So what I find interesting here, that Global Village is presented as a place where this kind of really melting pot or cosmopolitanism is expressed, and which is very rare in other places. So it's described like as an inclusive places. Of course, we can deconstruct, but this is a way that there is several papers going in the same ways of describing Global Village as kind of very inclusive places. At the same time, if you look at different commentaries from visitors who generally are very positive about Global Village, you will see that people enjoy it very much. And there is also a problem with my PowerPoint, because I had a quotation from someone who is defining himself as a white Westerner, saying that white Westerners are less than 5%. And he says the Global Village is a very culturally diverse place and seems to be where everyone else in Dubai goes. So it's insisting of the way that it's where non-Westerners go. So it's interesting for me to see this place as a place for non-Westerner, but very diverse. And you have this also, other quotations say, it's the world is here, it's a truly global experience. And you have this interesting quotation from Farouk Mohammed saying, having a lot of fun with my children, surely visit again to explore more world country without visa. And this little smiley, which shows that the visitor is not at all, is very lucid about that, and is saying that he's appreciating his visit as a way to escape the restriction about mobilities for him having an Indian passport. So for me, this quotation is interesting also to see that Global Village expresses a kind of imagined cosmopolitanism. In Global Village, in Global Village, you can taste, you can experience a kind of imagined cosmopolitanism. And you can be part of this by being a consumer, even though you know that this participation is only symbolic, as it is very obviously the case. Of course, you have also different, other people will say that it's very skeptical about it, and you have this other quotation saying it's a fraud program, you can't get experience in tests of different countries, it's full of business. So of course you will find different vision of this global village. But for me, again, what I think interesting with global village, it's a very rare example of global conception available to a large audience in a city where practices of consumption are designed mostly for wealthy people. And it's the same as we're going to see for accommodation. And in another margin of the city, there is this interesting area of Dubai International City. And it's interesting because it's one of the few spaces which have been designed for housing low and middle class foreigners, except, of course, from the labor camp or the labor accommodation. So just a few words also of context about International City. It was built by Nakhil, and it opened in 2007. And it's one of the lowest rent in Dubai. Yasser Sheshtawi has mapped the different rents of Dubai, and very clearly International City is one of the places in Dubai where you can find the lowest rent. Initially, it was planned for housing 6,000 persons, and now it had about 1,000 persons. And this overcrowding has led to serious problems with infrastructure. So International City, if you speak about International City to other inhabitants of Dubai, you will see that it has very bad reputation. You will hear about weak infrastructure, problem of overflowing sewers, shoddy maintenance, pestilential odors from the neighborhood sewage treatment, which is just near International City. You will hear about endemic prostitution, difficult access at peak hours, and very huge problem of parking during day and night. And here, just to give you an idea of this, how it was designed, you will see that International City is divided in different clusters, and each cluster has the name of a country. So you have France cluster, Spain cluster, Italy, Russia, England. And as you see here, the difference with Global Village, if you study the representation of the word, it's more Western centered because you have mainly European countries. So the representation of the word here, International City and in Global Village, it's not exactly the same. So this kind of cosmopolitanism is translated in the architecture. So here you will see, okay, I've used problems photograph with my everything is mixed up. I don't know what happened with the PowerPoint, but never mind. You have here Italian cluster, but the more representative photo has disappeared. But you have this kind of balcony and this kind of ogive, which are supposed to remind you the Venetian landscape. You have also a dome of Florence. And here, it's here now. You have this cluster of Italy, which is marked by numbers and this kind of architectural design. And you will find also a very huge diversity of restaurants. So here you have the 2 Chinese restaurants here and an Indian restaurant, like everywhere, of course, in Dubai. But what I'd like to emphasize is that you won't find many you will find very few Westerners living in international cities. And of course, there is no connection between the name of the cluster and the people who live in this cluster. It's completely different. The only one which is very marked by a kind of nationality is the Chinese cluster. So here you have you have only this picture now of the Chinese cluster, where you find a lot of Chinese restaurants, Chinese clinics, and a huge and busy supermarket called Wenzhou, where you can find different products from China, vegetable, fruits, and everything is written, of course, in Chinese, when you can find pork. So here, and you have also to remind that the big mall, Dragon Mart, which is specialized in products from China, is just very near, next to international cities. So you have this kind of cluster of Chinese cluster, but we are in a very different model than it's not at all Chinatown, as we can see in America or in other countries. It's not at all an American Chinatown, as we can see in other countries. So you have this cosmopolitanism in the architecture, but in a way it's very limited. The point also, which is interesting with Dubai International City, it's one of the rare space in Dubai where you see bikes and where people will use bikes to move. And there is, in this way, a sense of neighborhood, which is not present in maybe in other neighborhoods. Wow. So this one is also upside down. I don't know. It's something magic. It's a mess completely. The PowerPoint, it's a mess. I'm very sorry for that. It's the first time it's happening to me. So what I'd like to explain about Dubai International City, it's the question, which is also a very classical question in Gulf City, is the question of bachelors. So this figure of the bachelor is of course due to the very specific structure of the society in Dubai. I just want to remind that now in Dubai, the population is composed by 70% of males, and there is a very clearly an over-masculinization of the city, and this contributes, and which is due to the different migration policies. But what interests me is then from this emerge a category of the bachelor, which of course is not at all linked to the real status of the man who can be married or not. It's not the point at all, but it's categorized as a bachelor, which appears as a moral threat to the urban order. And you have different papers who has been written on by scholars on the bachelor panic or on the bachelor figure, but it's usually limited to this question in inner cities, in the old neighborhood of the city, or in the way that it's perceived by Emirati families, as in the paper by Sarmadi. And what I find interesting here in Dubai International City is you will find also the same of panic about bachelors. And then I just have to remind you some of the evolution of the city, because when International City was built and opened in 27, it was at the same time they had a campaign by the Dubai municipality called One Villa, One Family. And this was an attempt from the municipality to fight against the division of villa who were left by its previous inhabitants, who were Emirati who fled to suburban neighborhood to have a villa, and who were rented and sub-rented and divided to migrants. And this provoked kind of tension between ancient neighbors, the people who were still living here, and this arrival of new inhabitants, mainly migrants. And this triggers a campaign from the municipality who tried to fight this problem of division and sublocation and sharing of villa between 10 or 20 people. So you will find a lot of narratives about this threat of the bachelors, and you will see all these very classical narratives about anti-immigration narratives speaking about invasions of bachelor, which are seen to be a threat to both the cleanliness of the space and the safety of the place. So every time you hear about the bachelor panic, you will hear about women and children who will not feel safe in this place anymore. So this is a very current category. But according to Caroline Ozela and Jane Bristol-Rees, they were arguing that there were no at all bachelor panic in the Emirates. And I'm not on the opposite. I think there is one. And what I find interesting studying Dubai International City, I discovered that there was also one panic, but not from the Emirati family, but also from the middle class foreign family living in Dubai International City. Because what happened during the crisis, so after the crisis in 2008, 2009, the rents went down very quickly. So a lot of people left their apartment to other or bigger or nicer apartments in other part of the city. And then a lot of employers choose Dubai International City for accommodation for the workers. So in Dubai International City, which is mostly limited to studio and one-bedroom apartments, you will find also sharing accommodation with sometimes like 20 people in one-bedroom apartment. This is very, and so this completely changed the idea of the place. And at the same time, because of the crisis, Nakhil also stopped to, the maintenance of the infrastructure were not as good as it was at the beginning. So there were progressively a deterioration of Dubai International City, and you will find a lot of discourses, narratives about international city becoming another Sonapur. Sonapur is this huge labor camp in the old part of Dubai, and you have all this very negative way of describing international city as a bachelor city, a shantytown city, a city of crime. And there is one quotation which I found very interesting, saying from one inhabitant of Dubai International City, if they do not segregate bachelors from families, this place will become a total labor camp. So here you will find that this idea of segregation, it's also an idea and which is shared not only with, it's not only a logic which is part of the main thinking of Emirati family, but it's also part of the thinking of middle class foreign family. So there is a kind of ethos of non-mixing which is prevailing, and all this kind of debate, I found it in the different commentary after a paper from Gulf News, and there was this debate, and there were only very few readers saying that trying to defend laborers and the so-called bachelor, and shifting the discussion to the problem of lack of cheap accommodation available to workers in Dubai. But these people taking the defense of the bachelors, they were clearly not living in Dubai International City, but saying living in Dubai Marina, so very different, more posh city in part of the city. So if you look at this claim for more segregation, it's interesting to know that it's now a vision of the city that is shared by middle and upper class, and it goes beyond national difference. So my question is this a sign for an integration to a common culture of the different inhabitants of Dubai, whether they be national or foreigners? So as a conclusion, we'll just try to wrap up the main idea of my talk. Just remind that I envision the Dubai cosmopolitanism based on 4 pillars: globalization, consumption, non-integration, and segregation, even though it's not, segregation has to be, of course, there is also very important part also of mixed places and not only segregation. But what I want to highlight is that in its quest for global visibility and status, Dubai government has promoted a very friendly and positive image of diversity, and it encourages the construction of cosmopolitan landscape that cater for a global taste for consuming foreign place. And both Global Village and Dubai International City illustrate this need to present Dubai as a cosmopolis. Though my main question is how Dubai, analyzed through these two ordinary spaces, maybe a valuable case study to broaden the base of cosmopolitanism to low and middle class and to non-Western cities in the context of migration. So can we take Dubai as a case study to rethink cosmopolitanism for a non-Western city? And for me, and I will finish on this last slide, the two spaces, they convey an image of worldliness, and their built environment plays on this representation of global diversity, of this image of, in French, we say la ville monde, the cosmopolis. So we have here two forms of suburban non-Western cosmopolitanism. And if I want to differentiate the two spaces, I would say that Global Village epitomizes the commodification of difference, where cosmopolitanism is performed as a form of global consumption, but where logic of inclusion prevail. And at the opposite, I would say that Dubai International City, what I try to show is the novelty of the extension of the logic of exclusion from emirati family to middle-class foreign residents, and from inner city to peripheral areas. So for me, these two spaces, these two case studies, they embody very well the way Dubai can stand for a new urban formulation of cosmopolitanism, with all its contradiction, and the concomitant logic of inclusion and exclusion, which plays at the same time. And I think this complex type of cosmopolitanism is not specific to Dubai, and it can be confronted to other cities like Asian cities. And I think the case of comparison with Singapore, and I've started to work a little bit on this comparison between Singapore and Dubai, it's also very interesting. And for me, developing such comparative perspective will surely enrich our understanding of urban diversity in non-Western cities in non-integrative context. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Delphine. Can you stop the screen share so that we appear? Perfect. Thank you very much for this fascinating talk. That was extremely interesting. I will use my privilege as the host for this conference to ask you a first question. A question concerning first Global Village and the pavilions at Global Village. Do the embassies or the consulates of the countries that are represented in Global Village actually intervene at any level concerning the image that is reflected of them?
Okay. Do you want me to respond to, shall I take different several questions?
Yeah, by turn. Yes, you can answer my question first, and then I will give an opportunity to other people to ask questions. RK and Laurent Bonnefoy will be asking questions. Yes.
So as I told you, this is very preliminary result of my research. So I haven't done yet this kind of field work with the person who are organizing the people who are renting this place. So I'm not sure, and I think they are not when I was speaking about India, there were links. There was a strong link with the Indian Association. So in this case, the link with the consulate is clear. But for instance, the European countries, I'm pretty sure that there is no link at all. And if you when I went there and I visited the French pavilion, the products who were sold, they were not at all linked to France at all. So this is a question I have to dig. So who is? But I think it's to what extent the representatives of the consulate or embassy are involved in the process. I think they are not that much involved, but still I have to dig that.
Thank you very much. So I think Laurent Bonnefoy wanted to ask a question, so I will open his mic as soon as I find him. There he is. Laurent, you can now speak.
Oh, hello, good evening. Yes,
Hi,
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to know how do you think the recent changes linked to the pandemic are likely to change the dimensions that you mentioned? One of them being a potential shrinking of the overall population, departure of many migrant workers, either from the West or from South Asia or elsewhere. How do you think the public policies are going to deal with these changes?
Okay. So yeah, we can wonder if the pandemic is going to are they going to stop this kind of cosmopolitan policy or not? I would say in a way, of course, as you said, there is a lot of people. There are a lot of people who left the country, but at the same time, what I've just noticed about Dubai, and it's very different with Abu Dhabi in the way they responded to the pandemic. Dubai has no other choice to keep open and to keep, for instance, tourists coming, and which has been seen now for Christmas holiday, that for instance, a lot of French people went to Dubai, and there were a lot of invitation to keep Dubai open and to try to offer a tourist destination when you can live as if the COVID does not exist. That a lot of many people I know from different social background in France, they went to Dubai for holidays, and they were just arguing that the way they choose this destination, even though it's very now complicated to move outside France. So I think from this perspective that the COVID and the pandemic is very, it's a kind of course, it's a crisis, very terrible for Dubai, because all this model of the city is based to openness to the world, from the globalization. So if the flux, or if if everything is vanishing, or is less, if the city is less interconnected to the different flows, it's of course very problematic. So that's why they have to try to continue as much as possible, and that is again not at all the model chosen by Abu Dhabi, but the economic model is completely different. So Dubai has not the same, of course, financial possibility that Abu Dhabi has. So I think it's explaining the different choices. I would say also that the pandemic revealed very strongly the strong inequalities of this cosmopolitan society, while we see this neighborhood of all Dubai being stuck in quarantine, or the spreading of the virus in the labor accommodation, or the problem of the people and the geopolitical tension between India, Pakistan, and who didn't want to, the way it was hard to let the migrants coming back to their home country. So I think the crisis is also a very good, how do you say, way of expressing this very strong inequalities that the model of Dubai is based on.
Thank you. I will now open the microphone of RK. I don't know if RK is a gentleman or a lady. Can you present yourself and then ask a question or two questions?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah, this is Rana. Thank you so much for the presentation. So I had two questions. The first one is I'm wondering about how, because I think I heard something being presented in the beginning about measuring segregation, and that Dubai is one of the most segregated cities. And I'm wondering, how do you measure these things? Can you give us a bit more details about just in general, how what are the ways to measure segregations in cities? And the other question is about cosmopolitanism versus multiculturalism, and just wondering, how do these two different labels or terms differ, and how to apply them to Dubai? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rana. So for the first question, we I would say further that I'm mostly a qualitative geographer, so I'm not a quantitative geographer. But we, with Yasser El-Karoui, we had the occasion to work, and with a French cartographer, which is called Françoise Bauken, Yasser was able to have some data about the figures of emirati, non-emirati, and workers in each subsection of the city. So at the intra-urban level, he had the figure for 2010. So with this figure, we were able to build segregation indices, and so I didn't put them because it's a all different paper, but we found that the segregation indices are very strong if you compare to this segregation indices with American city and things like that. So they are very strong, but at the same time, it's based also on very rough categories between emirati, non-emirati, and workers. So in a way, it would be very interesting to have more refined data on nationality, but of course, it's not available. But this is the way it was a tentative. Yeah, I don't have the map, but we mapped this at the intra-urban level. So it was very quantitative work. For the second question about cosmopolitanism in multiculturalism, as I tried to show you in the first big table, there is different way of using cosmopolitanism. In some ways, you will find that multiculturalism is taken as a synonymous of cosmopolitanism. Or if you say a multicultural city will be the synonymous of a cosmopolitan city. But you will find also different use when multicultural is more, remember the table where I said there is this plural city where you have a very diverse population, but they don't mix, they don't interact a lot, and they don't mingle that much, and they stay in their own communities. So people will say that multicultural is more about different communities living together, but with strong borders between them. And cosmopolitan city will be where you have this kind of syncretism with kind of hybridation, which is coming out from this coexistence of people. I'm not sure I'm very clear, but you have two different use and meaning. Some are say they are equivalent, and other scholars will say that multicultural is more when you have different social groups who don't mix together, but they live next to them, but they don't mingle.
Thank you very much. There was another question now coming up from Philippe Petria. So, Philippe, I will open your mic as soon. Yes, there you are. You can now speak. You can now open your mic and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this thrilling talk, Dr. Pagès-El Karoui. I had a question about the comparison you just made between Dubai as the global village and the international city. I mean, it's a kind of methodological question. Are we comparing the same thing? Because as you suggested, the first one is a kind of consumer experience where visitors can, I mean, assume, go back to their home once they...
Philippe, I'm sorry, I can't hear you well.
Yeah, Philippe, maybe I could read your question because your microphone is almost unhearable. So I will read the question that you already prepared, if that's fine for you. So Philippe was saying, I have a question about the comparison you made between global village as an inclusive cosmopolitanism and international city as segregated cosmopolitanism. And Philippe is asking, are we comparing the same kind of experience? The former is a consumer experience for middle and upper classes able to go back home once they end their visit. The second is a non-chosen place of living where people might not have the feeling of inhabiting a cosmopolitan place.
Okay, yeah, Philippe, I totally agree with you. Maybe I was not very, because I wanted to go fast and maybe I was not clear. I'm not saying that these two places embody two different kind of cosmopolitanism. That's not what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that they express different expression of the cosmopolitanism in Dubai. Because for me, Dubai is a mix of different logic, contradictory logic of inclusion and exclusion, and maybe it's a bit too. Maybe I'm going a bit too far saying that this is inclusive and this is exclusive, because of course this is like maybe a default of my presentation because I want to go fast and I want to make categories. So in a real debate, of course I won't be so clear. But what I'm trying to say there, it's the way there is logic of inclusion in Dubai, it's through consumption. And global village in this way, it can is a good expression, a good example of that. And you are completely right. They are not at all the same experience. You have experience of consuming, of consumer, and experience of living in inhabitant. So my intention was not at all to say there is one cosmopolitan there and another one. But what I want to say also that global village is also very, there is a lot of people living. When I started to, the real fieldwork I've made extensively in Dubai was with Egyptian. And Egyptian living in global village, a lot of them, they go to global village. I won't say the same for French or for Westerner. They were maybe just, it's not a place for them. But what I mean is global village, I think it's, but I don't have any figures, but it will be interesting to see how many tourists there are as visitor and how many inhabitants. But I think there is both. I mean, from my point of view, but still it needs to be, I have no evidence of what I'm saying. But maybe I hope I make it more clear that my intention was not at all to oppose two different kind of cosmopolitanism. It was more to illustrate two different trends of this very specific cosmopolitanism in Dubai.
Thank you. Adrien Dubux, I think you have a question, so I'm opening your mic. You can use it now. You have to open it yourself at the same time. Adrien? So we seem to be having some sort of a technical problem with you, Adrien. So Laure, oh no, Adrien, perfect, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, switching the room because my baby boy is there. So thank you very much, Delphine, for the presentation.
Hi, Adrien.
Yeah.
It's nice to
sorry, my question. Yeah, my question was about. Do you think that the very non-inclusiveness, which is really a core of the UAE model, Sorry.
Adrien, can
So
you
do you
write
think
down
that
your
this
question in the
non-inclusiveness, which
chat?
is clearly written in a strong sense of the
Adrien, we cannot hear you. Your mic is not
Sorry?
working very well. Could you actually write your question in the conversation window? Adrien, please write your question in the conversation window because your mic is not working very well, unfortunately. Maybe while you write down your question, Laure, you could take Philippe's turn and ask, Adrien's turn and ask a question. Laure Assaf from New York University.
Yes, this is actually not Laure Assaf. This is Samuel Schielke using Laure Assaf's connection. Hello.
Okay.
I have first of all, I mean, as also an anthropologist of Egyptian migrations, I'm very happy to see that other people are turning to look at the UAE and Dubai as well. My question regarding the segregation is when you talk about, I think the international city seems somewhat as a kind of unique place because it's the only place that's been built as a project for lower incomes. But I was wondering, what about all the whole northeast of the metropolitan area that has much less segregation? Because my impression is that in Dubai, you have the southwest, the Abu Dhabi ward part of Dubai that is highly segregated, where you have places like Marina, where workers are made completely invisible and moved into labor camps far away. But when you move then from Dira towards Sharjah and Ajman, and there is a whole half of the city where there's much lower degree of segregation and where also middle-class Egyptian families appreciate the fact that it's lively and mixed. So what about that part of the agglomeration?
Yeah, I completely agree with you that I just launched the idea because it's my main objective was not to talk about segregation in Dubai. I was just speaking of segregation from the international city point of view. But I completely agree with you. For me, what I'm intending to do with my work is trying to see how complex is Dubai, and even for the segregation part, of course, in a way, Dubai is very segregation, but at the same time, I completely agree with you, there is places, there is neighborhoods which are very less segregated, and there is also, as you said, people who may enjoy the fact that it's not segregated. So, as I told you, it's, I have not already complete all my work, all my field work about this question, and segregation is also one of my very interesting point. I want to go deeper, but I completely agree with this idea that Dubai has a very complex structure, urban complex, complex urban structure, and you will find, and it's also, what kind of segregation do you speak? Do you speak about socioeconomic segregation? Because if you speak about national and the way that people of different nationality live together, there you have a very high level of mixing. When you see this different tower of Marina, and even like more, I wanted also to start someone about sharing accommodation from middle class young. And I met one French manager of restaurant. She was living in an accommodation, a very huge flat with, I don't remember, like 5 or 6, 7 bedrooms. And she were describing the way the different people were living with her. And it was very cosmopolitan and very diverse. So I'm also interested in studying all this occasion of this patterns of non-segregation also in Dubai. So yeah, I agree with your point.
Thank you. We have a last question that indirectly questions the role of tourism in cosmopolitanism. The question that was in the conversation window was about Israeli tourists coming to Dubai, adding perhaps a lot to the diversity of Dubai cosmopolitanism, but this actually leads us to another linked subject, which is to which extent is cosmopolitanism, very hard word to say, linked to the inhabitants only, or is a city that is relying so heavily on tourism also gaining its cosmopolitan status from these unrelenting waves of tourists coming from everywhere in the world? To which extent is cosmopolitanism only about people who live for either 1 year, 2 years, or 25 years in the city? And can we add to it the people that only come and live in it for 1 week or 3 weeks?
No, I'm sure that the tourism is a huge part of the construction of this cosmopolitanism in Dubai, because a lot of these cosmopolitan landscapes, which are built by the Dubai Emir, it's also for economic purpose. It's also to sell the image of a cosmopolitan or multicultural city. So I completely agree with you by saying that it's not cosmopolitanism in Dubai is not only a question of inhabitants. It's also, of course, a question of people, because when you see also the tourists in Dubai, they also come from very different large part of the world. There is more European. There are also, I mean, you will find maybe less American or North American, but there is also, I mean, the tourists itself are very diverse, and of course they add to this cosmopolitanism. But it's kind of how could I put that? It's also one of the chosen audience for this cosmopolitanism, which is built from the state, from the Dubai government, because building this image, and it's, we can make the link also of Dubai Expo 2020. It's, for me, it's a very it's very clearly an economic purpose of selling the city in the world and make sure that people will be coming in Dubai and will just, it's a way of finding an economic business plan that's showing that why should we come to Dubai? And the question of cosmopolitanism is one of the answers. Come to Dubai and you will see like the world in reduction. You will see like Dubai will show you the diversity of the world. In one place, you will show you the diversity of the world. So that's why I think Global Village is interesting, because it's in the same idea of the universal exhibition, that in a small place you will find, you will be able to encounter the diversity of the world. So it's kind of yeah, and of course tourism is a huge part of this. And as I told you, Global Village is linked to Dubai Shopping Festival, and Dubai Shopping Festival was open also to attract more tourists. So everything is linked.
I see. And since the question was specifically pointing Israeli tourists as a new provenance of tourism being added to all the former origin of tourism, does it change anything in this equation, or is it just another nationality of all the people from the world coming from Dubai?
Well, it's an interesting question, but I have no idea, and I really don't know how to what to answer to a question. Let's see, maybe in a few months. But I mean, no, I have no idea.
Thank you. I thank you very much, Delphine. I guess this is quite tiring. We've been talking now for almost an hour and a half. So many thanks for this extremely interesting and extremely rich talk. And we all hope to see you in person in Dubai.
I would love to. I would love to.
As soon as possible. It's becoming increasingly difficult these days with the pandemic, but hoping to see you soon. Thank you again for this talk.
And thank you again for inviting me. I was very pleased to be here and to share my work with you. Thank you so much for all your questions.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Have a good afternoon in Paris.
Bye, Philip. Bye.
Good evening for all the people watching us in the UAE.